let me structure it this way. Let's talk about Thailand first, and then we can talk about the Milk Tea Alliance and also about yourself and the situation in Hong Kong. Now, in Thailand, there's a conspiracy theory floating around uh, regarding an international syndicate of Western governments, the media, human rights organization, capitalists, so on and so forth, that are trying to support the pro-democracy movement in Thailand in order to undermine the Thai government in its geopolitical game against China. And part of the syndicate, a lot of these people also name you, Joshua Wong, as a part of the syndicate. What do you think about this conspiracy theory, and are there any truth to it?
With this kind of misleading narrative or fake news propaganda, I think it is no evidence at all to have this kind of accusation. As the one who believes in freedom and democracy, I believe no matter activists in Hong Kong and Thailand, even we come from different country with diverse cultural background and historical path, democracy and freedom are all those values that we cherish.
Do you yourself have you yourself any contact with the leaders of the movement here in Thailand? For example, Anon Nampa, Rungpanasaya, Penguin Parichirawak?
As we all know that activists in the previous day before the movement started in 2019 or 2020, we already have the experience to have some of the interaction. For example, 4 years ago, I've been invited by professor from Chulalongkorn University to deliver a speech in Bangkok. But when I arrived Bangkok airport, I was blacklisted and being banned to enter Thailand. And that's also the first time for me to interact with those activists in Thailand. Yeah.
Also, have those activists in Thailand learned anything from your activism in Hong Kong? Because from the observation of how the protest is handled, the hand signals, the marching order, and everything, there's a lot of similarities in the protests in Thailand when compared to Hong Kong.
Uh, People in Thailand inspire Hong Kong. Hong Kong people also inspire people in Thailand. And I think in the digital era, it's not surprise at all for how activists might take reference from those new technology and innovative idea to push forward social movement and campaign.
Okay. Also, does the does the protest in Thailand, in your opinion, does it have to get more radical to have more impact?
Movement is radical or not, it is hard to be defined because different country or city, people might have different definition or understanding on the standard of radical. But I would say that how to push forward the social progress and to enhance those universal values that all we believe in, which is really important and remarkable. And I think for those millennials and Generation X, those born after 2000, that even younger than me, that have the commitment and responsibility to push forward social change is already a good implication.
Do you think what has happened in Hong Kong is something that the protests in Bangkok should not push for, meaning violent in the street, a certain
Clash,
level of chaos?
I never blame the victim and use the term of chaos to describe the protest in Hong Kong, so I disagree with what you have asked and
Mhm.
mentioned. But what I imply is I never blame the victim, and political brutality should be stopped by urging the government to hold the accountability. Political crisis must solve by political system reform. I never blame on the victim and activists.
Can you explain the phenomenon of this Milk Tea Alliance, an alliance of pro-democracy supporters across Asia? How did this phenomenon come about?
Milk Tea Alliance is not a formal structural political organization or alliance. It's a loose definition, internet or online campaign that widely spread on Twitter and different social media. But it also implies how people in Hong Kong, Thailand, and Taiwan that under authoritarian suppression will continue the resistance in different ways and show their support to each other.
Do you think this social media campaign also has an effect, real effect on the ground? Because in Thailand, there are movements within Thailand itself by Thai activists in support of the movement in Hong Kong, and they have organized rally in front of the Chinese embassy, for example. Is this something beneficial to your movement in Hong Kong?
It's beneficial to put Hong Kong under the global spotlight and to generate the international momentum to pay attention towards Hong Kong. And I believe that how this kind of global solidarity and unity will just enhance the global civil society development.
How closely have you been following the situation in Thailand?
As the activists in Hong Kong, we really realizing how the protests on street in Thailand in 2020 is quite similar as the protest scene in 2019 at Hong Kong. And I think how to send a clear signal to the authorities to hold the police accountability, which is really important no matter in Hong Kong or Thailand.
Do we face a similar problem in which that there have been police quote unquote brutality? However, the protesters, the movements are rather powerless to do anything because the law is on the other side. They have full power of the law.
For the elite class or ruling class who dominated the future of young generation, even that's the uphill battle, I believe the young generation will also try their best to regain their future. And of course, in Hong Kong, the cultural background is quite different with Thailand. At least during our struggle and as protests in Hong Kong, we didn't have any factor related to the king or the monarchy, which is different with what happening in Thailand. But I would say that how to confront those authoritarian ideology is always the difficult time for us. But even we might feel tired within the battle, but I believe activists and protesters will not be defeated in the war.
You have been fighting in Hong Kong, for a lack of better term, fighting since 2014. You have been in prison, I believe, at least 3 times. Is that correct? 3 times. What has been accomplished so far?
Hong Kong is not only the global financial center with economic animal. Here is the place with no matter youngster or elderlies who fight for democracy, and we deserve to enjoy freedom. And when country around the world, especially in Asia, pretend and intend kowtow to China, I think the protests in 2019 in Hong Kong already sending a clear message to the world: kowtow to China should not be the only option. No matter with the Belt and Road Initiative or the wolf warrior diplomacy of China, I think how the world should deal with Beijing or this kind of authoritarian threat or expression, that's the things that the world must care about.
What do you see next for yourself and also for the pro-democracy movement in Asia?
No one could hold the crystal ball to predict the future, but I wish Hong Kong can be Hong Kong again. And here is the place that allowing Hong Kongers to determine our destiny.
When you say Hong Kong to be Hong Kong again, do you mean Hong Kong under British colonial rule or Hong Kong as an independent state on its own?
It means Hong Kong under democracy, freedom, and human rights.
Okay. Thank you very much for joining me today. It has been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.